Good morning. Good morning. Welcome in. Your SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. In any of the 82 counties in the state of Mississippi, the show is powered by Farm Bureau Insurance. You're listening Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, coming off Bama dominating Georgia. I know all of y'all picked that game. Michigan with the dub. We know who's in the college football playoff. Brent Venables to Oklahoma. Looks like Jeff Lebby to Oklahoma, too. And Cristobal to Miami, and some other things happening in the world of college football. Tom Luginbill knows all these crazy people, and he joins us on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. Of course, Lugs is a national college football analyst with ESPN. Tom, let's start with Brent Venables from – you know all about this Clemson program. He spent 10 years at Clemson, 13 at Oklahoma. He's been Dabo's dude on that side of the football and been able to run it A to Z, and now he gets his opportunity. What do you make of Brent Venables being hired and taking
the roots that obviously are pretty deep there, and understanding of the inner workings and the dynamics of the job, the pressures of the job there. It just seems to fit. You know, we kept hearing each and every year about Brent Venables being a candidate for this job or that job, and I just think he played it really smart. Each step of the way, if it wasn't the right thing, he just kept making more money with Clemson, kept building his resume as one of the premier defensive play callers in all of college football, winning conference and national championships, and he played the slow game, and it paid off for him. And, you know, I think that he's one of those guys that's going to be a tireless, dynamic recruiter. You mentioned Jeff Lebby. They obviously know offensively what style of play that they'd like to have there. I think a hire like that really solidifies Caleb Williams' future as the quarterback at Oklahoma. But there's also going to be some challenges. You know, you're heading into the SEC. You're going to be going into a much more competitive recruiting footprint, and you don't reside in the middle of it like the majority of your competitors do. So there's going to be some inherent challenges there. But I do think it's important to note that with the established recruiting that Brent Venables had as an assistant coach at Oklahoma, and knowing that footprint, and then spending the last 10 years at Clemson and having intimate knowledge of the Southeast recruiting footprint, is going to help ease them getting their foot in the door with the Oklahoma brand as they move into the SEC.
And if Jeff Lebby moves from Ole Miss to Oklahoma, what does Lebby bring to the table for Oklahoma and Brent Venables?
Fast-paced, up-tempo, spread you out, run first, RPO, play-action pass. It's a proven system. It's a system that whether you want to talk about Art Briles or Josh Heupel or Jeff Lebby and all of the different Wade Kendall Briles and all the different tweaks and different iterations that we've seen of it, it's about spreading people out, going fast, but not being a true air raid team. You're not an air raid team. You're actual run first, RPO, play action pass team. And you know, when you have a quarterback like Caleb Williams that brings many of the similar skill sets that a Matt Corral brings, I think it should kind of be a perfect fit, a perfect marriage right at the right time if that were to happen.
Tom Luginbill joining us on the Out of Bounds show. Let's go to Bama, Georgia. Man, to take down the king, you got to be a bad dude. And I think a lot of us looked at it and thought that Georgia would, you know, walk the walk during this game. And how surprised were you that Georgia couldn't put pressure on Bryce Young? And, well, it really kind of started there. And eventually, Lugs, and I think this is where you were going earlier, eventually guys are going to be running wide open when you have Alabama talent, Bryce Young talent. If you can't make him uncomfortable, what was your takeaway, Lugs?
Well, I felt going into the game that this was actually the first time that if you take each and every week leading up to this game, Georgia actually had the better team. They had played as the better team. we had seen some deficiencies in some areas of concern with Alabama. Although they were winning, they would find ways to win. It looked like this was the time for it to actually happen. Now, you and I have talked the last couple of weeks. I felt very, very strongly that, number one, the pressure was on Georgia, not on Alabama, all right? Alabama's schedule to get into the SEC title game the last 2 weeks of the regular season, I believe, really benefited them. Georgia was on cruise control with Charleston Southern and Georgia Tech. I think that helped Alabama. And then on top of that, what we found out, and what we usually find out, is if one team has a dynamic player at quarterback and the other team does not, the team that doesn't is going to be at a distinct disadvantage. And Georgia, for the first time all year long, was put in a position where they were going to have to score a lot of points. And it might have taken them out of their game plan of controlling how the game's played, leaning on that defense. And it wasn't just Stetson Bennett's fault. If you watch the Georgia offensive line, a bad day in the offensive line. You watch the targets for Georgia, there wasn't a lot of guys getting open. There weren't a lot of places for Stetson Bennett to go with the football. And then he ended up turning the ball over. And when that happened and Alabama started separating, Georgia's not built and had not proven throughout the year that they could do that because nobody made them do that. And we've talked about that ad nauseum over the last, back half of the season of whether or not there was going to be a team that could put them in that position.
Well, hold on.
And Alabama did.
You said the last 6-7 months on this show that the one thing that has really surprised you about Georgia and Kirby Smart is as great of an all-world recruiter as he's been, how poor a job they've done recruiting the quarterback position, and it caught up with them on Saturday, Luke.
Big time. And I still feel strongly that way. I think Kirby Smart and their staff knows it, that they missed the timing of the Justin Fields thing hurt them. All right. And I don't blame Kirby Smart for that at all. You inherit a football team where, you had a player, or you have a football team where you have a freshman quarterback that comes into play for an injured quarterback, and he takes you to the national championship game. What are you supposed to do? Bench him? I mean, I felt for Kirby and the staff because the timing of that just did not work out. So Justin Fields moves on. But the subsequent in which they signed guys like Daquan Mathis and Harrison Beck and guys that just aren't good enough to play at the University of Georgia, in my opinion. Stetson Bennett's a former walk-on. If they don't have the transfer of JT Daniels, who, by the way, has had limited playing time with Georgia. It wasn't until the latter half of last year and the first portion of this year that he's even played quarterback for Georgia. And I do believe when you get into a championship setting, whether it's a conference title game, whether it's a college football playoff, all right, you better have a difference maker or at least a guy that can change the game that you win because of at quarterback. Because if you don't, all right, you're going to have some problems. And we see Desmond Ridder at Cincinnati, difference maker. We've seen Bryce Young at Alabama. Cade McNamara has had a fantastic season for Michigan. What does that mean for Georgia in the college football playoff?
Should Kirby Smart have put in JT Daniels in the second half or during the game? What was your read on it?
I don't know if we know enough about the severity of where his health is to be able to say, hey, why didn't you put JT Daniels in? Maybe they couldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not available. Maybe he's only available in the most dire of emergency circumstances. I don't believe anybody knows that. The question's going to be, going forward, as you prepare for the college football playoff, figuring out who is the guy that gives you the best chance to beat Michigan. And whether that is going to be JT Daniels, how healthy is he? Is it going to be Stetson Bennett? Because I don't think you can go into a college football playoff game and have a guy at quarterback that you're having to work around in order to win the game.
Yeah. They got about 4 weeks close.
Yeah.
15 practices or whatever it is. Okay. Tom Luginbill on the Bell's Two-Hearted L guest line. Even with Georgia's poor showing on Saturday, am I wrong to think that Georgia should beat Michigan? I mean, just right off the bat before doing a deep dive into what?
To be honest with you, I don't know if they should. Do I think they are capable of do I think they should beat Michigan? They probably have better overall top-to-bottom talent overall than Michigan does. But Michigan right now is playing as one of the best teams in college football. When you look at Michigan, Bo, and you're trying to come up with a glaring deficiency, where is it? I mean, not all teams aren't perfect, all right? All
Sure.
teams are going to have some areas where they're not where they want to be. But do you see anything with Michigan where you go, oh, my gosh, if they got exposed there, they'd be in big trouble? And there's really nothing to point out. They can run the football. They can make explosive plays on offense. They're not heavily penalized. They value the football. They create turnovers on defense. They can stop the run. They've got 2 edge pass rushers, and they don't give up explosives on defense, and they've been a competent team in the kicking game. Michigan is talented enough and good enough to beat anybody in college football if they go out there and just play their game because they don't beat themselves. I mean, that's the bottom line. So Georgia may have better overall players. The question is, on that day, will Georgia be the best team?
Michigan has, I agree. I mean, Georgia has more talent. Michigan has more balance with their 2 units, it looks like. And you could argue, look, man, Harbaugh rebuilt San Diego, Stanford, and the San Francisco 49ers. I never really understood the pouring it on him, but he's the better coach, too. I get Kirby may be the better super recruiter. A lot of that's geography, too, but all right. So knowing that Georgia has the least talented QB in the playoffs, how do you handicap it now with what you were able to see on Saturday as far as the college football playoff, Tom?
Well, I think, if you look at Georgia, they're clearly talented. But I don't know if you can have subpar quarterback play or subpar offensive line play against a defense like Michigan that can rush the passer and step the edges if you're going to win the football game. Now, I say that, conversely, if you look at Michigan from an offensive perspective and you look at Georgia's team speed on defense, which will be equal to, if not greater, what Ohio State was on defense, although Ohio State did not play a schematically sound game, but just in terms of pure athletes and speed, I don't think that Michigan is a team that can beat Georgia offensively by employing an outside lateral run game because Georgia's team speed is just too fast. I think to neutralize Georgia, Michigan needs to be a downhill point of attack between the tackles running football team in this particular game to neutralize some of Georgia's speed. But again, I look at Desmond Ridder at Cincinnati, got a quarterback that you can win because of, not in spite of. You look at Bryce Young, I think he's going to be the Heisman Trophy winner at Alabama. All right. You look at Georgia. We don't know what their best answer is yet at Georgia. I'm concerned about that. And I think at Michigan, the one thing that Michigan has done that they have really not been able to do over the last 5 to 6 years is solidify the quarterback position with consistent production. And that's what Cade McNamara has given them. They bring in the freshman J.J. McCarthy. He's a spark with his legs. And so now all of a sudden you have to be able to defend quarterback run when he comes into the game. That Michigan-Georgia game, I think, is probably the most intriguing, evenly matched game between the 4 teams.
Agree. Okay. Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN. He joins us on the Out of Bounds show. Were you surprised, Tom, that once they got into the second quarter, Bama and Georgia on Saturday, that at times Bama wide receivers were running wide open with Georgia's personnel on defense?
Yeah, I was surprised, and I think some of the wide open stuff was not just a result of a lack of pass rush. I think that Georgia made some errors. I think they blew some coverages, whether their eyes were in the wrong place or their landmarks were incorrect. They did not have guys in the right spots, and we become so accustomed to seeing them just blanket people. Now, who has Alabama's personnel that they've played to this point? Nobody.
Exactly.
All right, so obviously that creates some challenges. And, it was interesting because what we've seen from Bryce Young oftentimes this year was him bailing out what has been at times subpar, spotty offensive line play. He didn't have to do that on Saturday. He was able to navigate through his progressions from within the pocket where he did not have people in his face. He rarely had pressure at his legs. and he was able to scan the field and deliver the football. And to me, again, pressure bursts the pipe, right? If you get after the quarterback, you can really mask maybe any issues you're having on the back end. If you don't against Alabama's personnel, then your issues on the back end are going to get exposed.
The odds say that if you recruit at Georgia's level, 1 or 2, then eventually, you'll break through. So I'm not going to – I think people will pile on Kirby can't win the big one, although they could still win it, as you know, over the next few weeks. But, do you think Kirby Smart – like, it took Dabo a while, Lugs, right? I mean, he got smoked in the Orange Bowl like 70-21 by West Virginia, who's not really a good football program. So it takes some time. I'm not counting him out by any stretch, but do you think he's capable? Dabo obviously made adjustments, Lugs. He hired Venables. He had this whole Jeff Scott, Tony Elliott thing going, He leaned on Woody McCorvey and other people. And does Kirby have that?
Yeah, but you know what he had?
What?
You know what he had?
NFL QBs.
He had a quarterback.
Yeah.
Yes. If you start off the process and you happen to hit on a quarterback early, at that time it was Taj Boyd.
Right.
Then it became Deshaun Watson. Then it became Trevor Lawrence. That's the one thing Georgia has not been able to do. They did not hit on a quarterback early that was a difference maker. Now, you could say Jake Fromm was a phenomenal college football player and a player that could get you a conference championship game. Maybe you're not going to win it. Maybe you're not going to win the national title. But a really, really good, competent player, a good, solid starter. But look at Justin Fields at Ohio State. Look at Deshaun Watson. Look at Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. Look at all of these guys. They are generational type talents. And if you hit on one of those early to catapult the momentum in the building of your program, it kind of masks all the other areas that you're still trying to build because the quarterback kind of shadows all of that stuff.
Yeah. Joe Burrow. Okay. All right, let's switch gears. Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show. Blake, you've got something? Yeah, I want to get into that, but let's go Brian Kelly first. Brian Kelly is hired at LSU, and we know LSU's a monster. They just played for 3 titles with Miles and Ogeron, for goodness sakes, and won 2 of them. What is this a quick flip? You know the roster, the personnel, they're loaded. They'll pretty much sign just about whoever they want. What do you make of Kelly and how quickly he can get this thing up and running and maybe college football playoff type deal?
Well, I think that what we have to acknowledge with Brian Kelly is he knows what he wants. He has a blueprint. The proof's been in the pudding, going all the way back to Grand Valley State, and then Central Michigan, then Cincinnati and Notre Dame. And I think that in today's current college football climate, there could not have been a better job done at Notre Dame than the job that he did. All right. The problem is at Notre Dame right now, and Brian Kelly said this when he took the job at LSU, I wanted the opportunity to coach the best pure athletes that college football has to offer. Well, at Notre Dame, you may not be able to get those guys into school, and they may not be within the footprint that you need to be able to get them to come to your place. At LSU, you have both of those things, plus virtually resources that are unlimited to some degree. So to me, I think the number one thing he's got to do is he's got to evaluate what type of people they have, because they have way too many good athletes, very similar to Florida State, very similar to Florida this year, way too many good athletes to perform to that standard. And what that generally tells me is they've either got a locker room problem, they've got a mental toughness problem, they've got a competitive temperament problem, and that's what he needs to investigate most. He'll recruit, he'll get players in there, they will be a well-coached football team. I have no doubt about all of those things, but the current group that he's inheriting, I would not be surprised if there's going to be some attrition that comes from that program over the next 4 to 6 months.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay, what about Mario Cristobal from Oregon to Miami? So he goes back home. and it's a hotbed of recruiting. He understands the whole deal. He was a big game hunter way out in the middle of nowhere at Oregon. So he's in that 3-county area. Goodness gracious. What do you like the hire? Do you think that he can evolve and become
Wait, is it official?
Well,
no, but Miami did just pull their coaches off the recruiting trail.
Oh, okay.
Oh, they did. Okay. All right. So, yeah, and I'll tell you what, Bo, before I answer that question, I don't like how this has been handled. And you say what you want about Manny Diaz. He does not deserve, as a current employee of the University of Miami, to have these actions taken against him and his staff. What's he supposed to do? You currently have a job, and everybody's talking about them going out and hiring somebody to replace you, and nobody's fired you. I mean, put yourself in his shoes for just one moment, in those assistant coaches' shoes. I don't like it. I don't like this administratively from the University of Miami. You haven't solidified the addition of the athletic director. So now all of a sudden, you have a lame duck coach. You have no athletic director. You're talking to a guy at another school that's a proud alum of the University of Miami, which is all fine and dandy, but I'm sure he feels awkward in the current situation as well. He certainly wouldn't want that to happen to him.
No, Miami has tripped all over themselves for years now, and they did not handle the last few weeks well either. You're right.
Now, I'll say this, Bo. If the Dan Radakovich hire happens, Miami's going to get real good in football if he makes the right hire, because that is the most pro-athletics, pro-football athletic director, in my opinion, in all of college football, when it comes to unapologetically pushing all of your chips to the center of the table and saying, football is going to run this school. Either get on board or there's the door, and everybody's going to benefit. Just look at his tenure and what Clemson has developed into once he took the reins there. Look at how it impacted their community, their campus, the commerce in their community, enrollment, applications for enrollment, all because they invested in the biggest revenue producer on their campus. And as a result, everybody's benefiting. So if you're Miami and you can get a Dan Radakovich, you're a private institution. All right, you're going to have money. You got to go out and make this thing a big deal, and I think he would.
I've got 20 seconds. Why would he leave Clemson to go to a private university like the U? Is he an alum? I haven't even checked.
I don't know. Maybe another challenge, another way of going about doing it. You never know. But gosh, they need an on-campus stadium. I don't know if they can ever find the land, but that would be the start.
Yeah, it would. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it, buddy. Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst with ESPN, joining us on the Out of Bounds Show. Show is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent in any of the 82 counties in the state of Mississippi. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Brad Edwards coming up at 9.